Hello everyone, this is Marcio Cardoso back for another video on another important political issue. What I'm going to be talking about in this video is identity politics. I'll briefly describe what it is, um, why we still have it, why I'd like to see it go away, but probably won't anytime soon. So what are identity politics? Identity politics are essentially campaigning or politicking for a certain issue that'll benefit a certain ethnic group. Perfect example is the group Black Lives Matter. What do they march for? They are marching for, really specifically, the ending of constant targeting and shooting of unarmed black men. That's what they stand for. That is a perfect form of identity politics. What's another example? This immigration debate that we're going through. Immigration, essentially, something that could help make things easier for a lot of Latinos living in this country. That's a form of identity politics. You even have a white form of identity politics. You could argue that what happened last summer in Charlottesville with the protests of the alt-right movement is a form of identity politics for white people. Me personally, as someone who is a Bernie Sanders fan and as someone who was also a Barack Obama fan, would like to see identity politics go away. Barack Obama once said, we're living in a post-racial world. If you live in a post-racial world, identity politics is no longer necessary. And if you remember Bernie Sanders in 2016, he ran a campaign that was more about economic justice and always tying things to economics instead of race. It was always class warfare as opposed to racial injustice. So based on that, I'd kind of like to see identity politics go away, just like those men have mentioned. But it's unfortunately still somewhat necessary. If you remember the 2016 campaign, while Bernie was saying identity politics is not an issue and it's about class warfare, Hillary Clinton was on the other side taking a different approach and saying it was kind of necessary. And then if you look at the Republican primary of 2016, Donald Trump was also champion identity politics, white identity politics. And of course people will look at that and go, see, ooh, identity politics is dangerous. Look at what Trump's done. And again, for those of you who don't know, I am a progressive, so not a Trump fan, in case you're wondering, if you haven't already. But at the same time, you kind of need to have it. And I understand why you need to have a form of identity politics right now. You see, the powers that be of our system have done a great job having many different people, many different cultures clash against each other at the bottom, while they at the top are kind of looking down and going, ha, 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 ha. It's divide and conquer. Perfect example is our prison industry. A lot of our prisons are for-profit prisons, and as a result, they need to find a way to make money. So they will do certain things to find a way to make money. What do? Well, they've been, I would hate to say it, unfairly targeting people who are minorities, minority men, and predominantly young black men. Whites and blacks, it's been proven, Whites and blacks, it's been proven, use drugs at a certain rate, whether it be meth, marijuana, cocaine, you name it. And yet, it's blacks that are always arrested at a much higher rate than whites. You actually had the epidemic of the 1980s, the crack epidemic in the 1980s, where African Americans were using crack at a higher rate. And what happened? Anyone who was using crack was getting arrested. Whereas with whites, who were using more of the powder substance of cocaine, found ways to get away with it. Why was that? Why was that? Why is that? Why is it that young black men are being incarcerated at higher rates? Because again, the people at the top who are running the system need to find a way to make money and take advantage economically. So they divide and conquer. And they put young black men in jail. Immigration. Why hasn't there been a deal on immigration? A lot of Democrats and Republicans believe that they should have a deal on immigration. A little bit of border security, which will appease the right, and at the same time, conversely, a path towards citizenship, which will appease the left. But the powers that be, they don't want a deal. Because as long as you don't have a deal, you have a way of targeting a certain group of people. Latinos, Hispanics. And it's pitting them against working class white and black Americans. Because you see conflicts between Latinos and whites and also between Latinos and blacks. Whereas working class whites and blacks will sometimes say, a lot of times will say, hey, we're having to compete with these immigrants for jobs. A certain, a simple solution, maybe it's not that simple, but the solutions have been discussed ad nauseum. So it's not that difficult either, or not that complicated either. Solution to the immigration problem, a compromise to get it so that those immigrants now have citizenship and would allow them to better assimilate into society. Not even so much culturally as much as economically. And yet nothing gets done. Why? So they can continue to divide and conquer the people at the top. Naturally, Latinos are going to feel slighted because of this. Just like naturally, African Americans are going to feel slighted because they're going to jail at higher rates than whites for committing the same crimes at the same rates, if anything, at lower rates. So you need to vouch for those people, and those people need to vouch for themselves. And that's why identity politics is still a necessity, unfortunately. So for the Black Lives Matter group, for immigration activists, I say, hey, keep fighting the good fight. You got to do what you got to do. I commend that. And as someone who's a Bernie fan, that might surprise some of those people because there's this assumption that Bernie Sanders supporters are known as Bernie bros online and they don't believe in identity politics and they're secretly racist as well. That's not true. I'm proof of that. I'd love to see identity politics go away because it means we're in a post-racial society. But unfortunately, we're not there yet. And because we're not there yet, and because we need a form of identity politics, it makes a form of economic injustice a little bit more difficult, a little bit more challenging, because it becomes that much more difficult to get working class whites, working class blacks, working class Latinos, and everybody else together. When you get all of the working class together, all of that 99% together, if you will, it makes it that much easier to fight the people at the top, the powers that be. But we need to all get on the same page. And in order to do that, identity politics will still have its place, and necessarily so. It's like a cobweb, a spider web, all woven in, that the powers that be have created. And what we need to do is slowly but surely unwind the web without it breaking. We need to have a little bit of identity politics, particularly in certain issues, but understand that identity politics won't be the answer on every issue. So that's my viewpoint. Identity politics is still something that's needed. Not all the time, but on certain issues it's there. So I agree with Bernie in the sense that it's important that we try to move beyond it, and on certain issues, looking at it just from a racial perspective, I don't think is the answer. But at the same time, I agree with what Hillary was talking about, and people who are pro-identity politics saying it's still a necessity. They have a point as well. It's a tricky issue. And I hope I did the best I could explaining it. If you agree, give it an upvote. If not, or if you're still confused, feel free to download it as well. Or feel free to put up your own video and express what you think about it. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.